They say history often repeats itself, and that second ODI in Sydney in many ways felt like a spitting image of the first one. India's bowlers getting clobbered all over the park, India's fielding pretty sloppy, Australia posting a mammoth total. India's batting looked promising, but ultimately the bowlers leaving a bit too much for the batsmen to do. Ayaz, Memon and Mandira Lalvani join me as we look back on everything that transpired in Sydney this past Sunday, as well as to look ahead to the third ODI between India and Australia in Canberra. Ayaz, Mandira, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anubhav.
Great to see you as always. Ayaz, Groundhog Day, best way to describe everything that transpired in Sydney this past Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, look, the sense of deja vu, when you watch the second match, it was almost like a encore of the first one. Even the margin of victory for Australia was very similar, 66 and 51 runs. So I think the problems that existed in the first match for India continued in the second. There was no redemption in any aspect. Two batsmen clicked in the first match, two clicked in the second match, not the same ones. It was Virat Kohli and KL Rahul who made runs in the second match. The bowlers went for plenty. The fielders, as you mentioned, rather sloppy. Even somebody like a Jadeja dropping a catch, and not a difficult one at that. It just shows how underwhelming, if I might use that word, which is now the jargon these days, underwhelming India's performance has been in this ODI series. And there are many things that one can now talk about. The absence of a sixth bowler, obviously the absence of Rohit Sharma, that's been a big loss, and it's told on India's performance. Not winning, both times losing the toss, because you put up 340, 350 runs on the scoreboard. It's difficult for the second team to chase, the team batting second. So things not having gone well for India at all. Not the luck with the coin, but more, I think, not enough heft in the performance. And that, without mincing words, let's put it that way. Let's accept it that India played below par and Australia played quite superbly. They've just outclassed India in every aspect of the game.
Absolutely. That's what even the skipper said, right? They've completely been outplayed, and that's evident. Like you said, history repeats itself, but so quickly, back to back. One would have hoped for some reprieve, but it wasn't to be. And yes, all the issues that Ayaz pointed out, and since we're just doing a quick summary, also one big concern which we should discuss in this show at some stage is that the lack of early wickets. That is what is hurting us so badly. We allow them massive opening stands and huge scores. And by the time any damage is done, it's just too late. Pandya, to his credit, came in, bowled after so long, took a wicket, no less than Steve Smith, but, it's too little too late is what it turned out to be. So
yeah, I'd just like to add the point which Mandira has made about batting, and she's absolutely right. India, you need an early breakthrough or two, on absolutely flat tracks, because otherwise, if you don't get those wickets, what you're allowing is for them to build up a big total with all wickets in hand, and they can kind of launch an onslaught anytime they want, the opposite team. And India in both matches, interestingly, Mandira, in both matches they got off to a pretty decent start. In the first match, 50 runs in 4 overs. In the second match, also Mayank and Shikhar getting off to a start. And then you lose 2 or 3 wickets. And therefore, you're actually off to a floundering. By the time the 10th or 12th over is completed, you're floundering.
Absolutely.
Now, if you had 10 overs without a wicket lost, then you are in a stronger position to chase. In a sense, give credit to India where it's due in the batting. Is in both matches they topped 300 runs. In the second, they went up to 338. But if you're chasing 389, it seems very meager. So I don't fault the batting too much. Yes, we could have asked for more consistency from the top order. When you're chasing 350 plus totals, you need at least 4 of your top 6 batsmen to score runs. And if that doesn't happen, you're going to lose. And that's what's happened.
And let's talk a bit about the lack of early wickets. Both of you touched upon that. Very recently, we've extolled the virtues of India's bowling attack, saying it's one of the most menacing bowling attacks out there in world cricket, perhaps the most menacing Indian bowling attack ever. So what do you think has changed? Do you think it's just a temporary lull that they're going through right now? Or are there perhaps more fundamental issues that are plaguing the bowling? Mandira, starting with you.
Well, first and foremost, it's the one-day format which is being played after a long time. Let's not forget the bowlers they're coming on the back of the IPL, at which point they bowl 4 overs apiece for a match, and now they've got to bowl 10 each, right? And there's a lot of pressure on Jasprit Bumrah for starters. And of course, it's in Australia, flat tracks. There are many, many factors. I'm not so surprised that we've got pitted, but so badly, it's a bit sad. But yeah, so the bowling attack, I think it's a combination of lack of one day match practice. It's the fact that the Indian bowling attack is looking pedestrian, and I'm not trying to be mean here. They're completely outclassed. No trick is seeming to work, and I don't know why that is. Ayaz, maybe you can shed some light.
Well, I think fundamentally they've not bowled the right length for
Yeah.
these kind of pitches, So, and I also think that they are rusty. While the IPL has been played, as Mandira mentioned, it's just 4 overs a match. The training patterns are different from what it would be for ODIs, and hopefully it will change by the time the test matches come around. I think also Australia smartly played, left very little on the pitches for the Indian bowlers to exploit. While their bowlers, because maybe they're a little stronger or bigger built, they bowled a lot more short balls and hassled and hustled the Indian batsmen, which we couldn't do. And then also, I think that there was not too many tricks. The tricks were exposed. I think Warner and Smith were ready for anything that the Indian bowlers hurled. So they've done their homework extremely well. I
Yeah.
think Justin Langer and co. They've been watching, and because these are the two preeminent teams across formats. So I think they've worked very hard, and as I said earlier when we discussed it, that they seem to be revenge hungry. After what happened in 2018. 2018 we won the Test series, but they want to kind of, in Mandira's word, pitao India or pito India in all
Give us a
formats.
drubbing across all formats.
Across all formats.
And I ask a follow-up question for you. In addition to the poor length that you talked about, do you think a lack of variation has also cost India? Because you saw Hardik Pandya bowl 4 overs in the last match, and the fact that he was actually taking pace off the ball, he was trying his off cutters, actually set the blueprint in many ways for how you should be bowling on a pitch like the SCGs. So your take on the lack of variation that may have cost India in the bowling department?
You're absolutely right, Anubhav. I thought, in fact, that look, it was an act of desperation to get Pandya to bowl, because just the day before in the press conference he had said he can't bowl. He'll only bowl maybe at the end of the year or end of next year when the World T20 is being played. So he's been pushed into bowling because they're choiceless. There's nobody else who bowls. They gave Mayank Agarwal 1 over where he gave 10 runs. As we spoke last time, there's no Sehwag or Yuvraj or Tendulkar in the team who can turn his arm over and get past 4, 5, 6 overs. But Pandya is a very clever cricketer. So, I think he's got a great natural sense of understanding of the game, and he cut down on his pace. He's very clever. He reads the batsman's mind far better than most other bowlers, in my opinion. And even when as a batsman, he reads the minds of the opposite bowlers quite well, because that's why he's able to clear and hit so effectively. So he's a very clever cricketer. But, I don't think he could bowl more than 4 or 5 overs. Otherwise, Kohli would have bowled all 10 overs. You don't want him to break down and go again into a injury rehab, which will take 5-6 months, because that'll be long-term damage. But yes, I think maybe in the second match itself, they should have tried somebody like a T. Natarajan, who's a left arm pacer. Just a little difference from the predictability of a right arm fast bowler coming in bowl to you. Not that Shami and Bumrah are alike in any way, or for that matter, Saini. And I think the real problem has been Bumrah going for so many runs, almost 7.6, 7.7 runs in the 2 matches. He's given 152 runs, taken 2 wickets. Shami in the second match. Navdeep Saini, you could say he doesn't have that much experience, but he's not worked at all. He's not clicked. So, one thing which baffles me is that Natarajan was included in the ODI squad because it was thought that Saini had a back spasm. Now, if he's got a back spasm and he's not 100% fit, then how the hell? He's played 2 matches on the trot. So, there seems to be some kind of confusion. I also think that maybe, more. I mean, yes, the bowlers haven't done well, but to keep changing after 1, 2 overs, 2 over spells is more like a T20 pattern than a ODI pattern, So, it's an unenviable task for the captain when your bowlers are getting clobbered so badly. But this is the time when the bowlers, the fielders, and the captain himself, of course, have to stand up and just kind of rework their own situation and see what better can come out of trying something new.
Exactly. Now, the third match, although it's a dead rubber, it's a good time for the captain to explore all these options, including Natarajan. It's a new venue. David Warner's out for his injury. So let's, hope that we can make some changes. I think maybe T. Natarajan should get a look in, maybe Shardul Thakur, maybe Kuldeep Yadav, just get them in and play them. They
Yeah.
need to have that, have that exposure to be able to be ready now for the next format, which is T20. I mean, after after the one days are over. And then, of course, the all important test contests, of course, that's a different discussion for a different day.
But I'll just add here to this. I mean, we've talked about the fast bowlers, but our spinners are being equally disappointing. I mean, Jadeja is just not being able to pick up wickets. He couldn't pick up wickets in the IPL. He's not picking up wickets here. There's one
Not
thing to be
feeling well also.
economical. Yeah, not. It's one thing to be economical. But if you're still giving away 60 runs in 10 overs, so you're not bowling 10 overs for 38 and 40, and making it things tight for the batsman. And you're not picking up wickets. And Yuzvendra Chahal has got hit for 89 runs, So there's no deception, there's no guile, which is putting the pressure on the batsman. And it's important to understand why it's hurting, because you would expect on a Sydney pitch, and if the track is so flat that the fast bowlers, batsmen hit you on the rise, you expect the spinners to do something. Adam Zampa did it in the first game for Australia. He bowled rather well even in the second innings, in the second match. So I think both pace bowlers and spinners have been a big letdown for India. It's not just the fast bowlers that one can say that they've been the letdown. And one other thing, Mandira,
Go on.
the third match, while it's a dead rubber, remember the ODI league has started.
Yes.
ODI championship. So every match carries points. So India still need to go out there and play whatever, play out of their skins to win this match.
They'll say.
They'll say.
There's a question on the bowling options that I definitely want to ask both of you, starting with Mandira. We knew about the fact that Hardik Pandya will not be able to bowl at the start of the series or before the start of the series. So Mandira, do you think the selectors perhaps missed a trick when it comes to selections, knowing that perhaps not having a sixth bowling option in the squad would mean that Kohli would have to rely heavily on only 5 bowlers without having any options, without having a plan B or a plan C?
We've been speaking about this since the start of the series, the lack of the all-rounders, right? And the fact that it's such a gaping hole. But now after these 2 matches, yes, that hole still exists. And the fact that they're trying to plug it with getting Pandya to bowl literally very, very part-time, say 4 overs, etc. But when your specialist bowlers are also not being able to make a dent,
exactly.
all-rounders kya kar lenge? You know what I'm trying to say? I think the main fault that needs to be addressed is this problem of the early wickets, basically. And that is only the job of the specialist bowlers.
I completely concur with Mandira. I know it's all, otherwise we're looking at excuses. It's 6 bowler nahi. But what about 5 bowler, 5 wicket nahi nikale those matches mein? They are not taking wickets.
Absolutely. And speaking of the importance of early wickets, a question that springs to mind is the fact that knowing that your lethal bowlers, the likes of Shami, Bumrah, are your highest chances of picking up wickets, the fact that Kohli's actually bowled them in a fairly staggered manner with a lion's share or perhaps a lot of the overs coming in the second half of Australia's innings as opposed to, during the early stages, do you think Kohli perhaps could have employed or used Bumrah and Shami in a smarter manner, bowling them up front as opposed to, bowling them in a staggered manner? Ayaz?
Well, I think he tried that in the first match. It didn't work. In the second match, he got Bumrah, just, took him off after 2 overs, hoping or perhaps, thinking that, maybe a change. Because I think Finch and Warner had the measure of the Indian bowlers. In the first match, they put on 100. In the second match, they put on 100 partnership. So they were looking so secure. And I think and it's easy to get kind of understand why Kohli would think like this, because I can't remember, except in the last 8-10 months, even against New Zealand last season and now, somebody like a Bumrah not only going wicketless in his first spell for 3 overs or 4 overs or whatever he might bowl, but also going for plenty, conceding runs. He's not being able to bleeding. I mean, and then you say, okay, maybe he'll do far better in the death because that's his speciality. But in the death, he's bleeding more. So to Shami. And so to Saini, maybe bowling. It's not enough to bowl at 148, 150. You can be, you'll be hit. The ball will go faster to the boundary if your control is not there. Because the ball comes onto the bat that much quicker, more easily. And if the batsman can find the gaps, he'll be chasing leather, which is what has happened with India in the first 2 matches. And in contrast, India have gone hammer and tongs when they started. Mayank Agarwal and Shikhar Dhawan, obviously chasing 374 and 389. You need to set up a very quick, rapid pace from the start. But it's also important to protect the wicket somehow. You have a 100-run partnership, it becomes a different ball game. 100-run partnership for the first wicket. Because here also, remember, your batting depth stops at number 6. Then you got Jadeja at number 7, who's the all-rounder. So to make it easier for the Kohlis and Shreyas Iyer and whoever else is going to be there in the batting lineup, Hardik, you need a very good start, because if you lose 62 for 3, if you are 62 for 2 or 3, these guys have to rebuild the innings rather than continue with the momentum.
Absolutely. If you see the Aussie innings, both the matches, they had 100 plus for the opening stand. Therein laid the difference among the
And
other
in the
teams.
second match, all top 5 batsmen got 50 plus.
Yeah.
And Smith is of course gone pagal ho gaya hai, wo to 100 bana raha hai. 62, and you can't.
He's marking his territory. Ke mere ghar
yeah, you can't set a field to him.
Yeah. And what he recently mentioned is that when he's in this kind of mood, he regards himself as Barry Bonds, the great baseball player.
Yeah. Didn't he get married in the US?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so.
Yeah. I think so. If I remember correctly, and I think he's a lover of baseball and the US sports.
Also, in a sense, if you see, just comparing the India of 2018 to the Indian team here, the lack of match practice all over the world, and the kind of frequent matches and travel and getting their eye in and having that practice all over the world, and the lack of it now is really starting to show. Whatever you're trying,
very important point Mandira has raised, and I must add this here because we can kind of castigate our own team and why not they perform badly, so criticism must be made. But since the IPL ended, and in the 15 days since, the Aussie players have gone and played Shield cricket. While our guys have been, whatever they've been doing in nets.
Yeah.
So they've not had any competitive cricket that they played. While the Australians have played, of course, they're in familiar conditions and pitches and turf and all that. And of course, at the end of it, I think there is a burning desire कि साला बदला लेना है. इनको सिखाना है, सबक सिखाना है. That's coming through.
The scales are very heavily tilted towards them, and because of all these factors. But Lalena hai, they're working towards it, playing towards it. They're playing at home. They've got fans coming in to support them. Look at all the pluses. There are tons.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And a similar point that Pulkit Sankala is bringing up here. He says, do you think India should have had more warm-up matches to get used to the conditions, since the team hasn't played together for close to 290 days? Which is what you touched upon.
If you had more warm-up matches, then Kohli would not have played white ball tournament at all. He would have come back. There would have been no days. You see, this whole 14-day quarantine has kind of made a mess of the itinerary. It's made it mandatory that you do nothing for 14 days except go to nets and, whatever you have to do while they are playing for their counties, for their own domestic teams. So you could have gone 15 days earlier, but how could you go when the IPL is on?
Yeah.
So I think this whole the calendar for cricket and for all sport actually has got quite badly rogered by COVID. So let's accept it. Having said that,
along with the rest of the
world. Having said that, everybody knew what they were going in for. I mean, the Indian players they should have been under no illusion that Australia is something that's going to really test you. And I think Mandira is right. I mean, if your main threat were what against the Aussies? It was Rohit Sharma, who's not there. It's Virat Kohli, who's there. He looked in good form. It's KL Rahul on current form. He batted extremely well. It's Shikhar Dhawan, who was in excellent form in the IPL. He's in good form here. Hardik Pandya has been a sort of a revelation, but he was also in very good form in the IPL. But it's Bumrah and Shami and Yuzvendra Chahal, who were looking so good in the IPL, are have just not been effective at all. And it shows you the difference the format can make, and the difference that conditions and pitches can make.
Absolutely. And you had the likes of Smith, Warner, Maxwell, who flatted receive in the IPL, but they've delivered the goods so far in this tournament, haven't they?
And
Oh,
how?
absolutely.
Absolutely. Ayaz, you took Virat Kohli's name. We've spoken a fair bit about India's bowling. We've spoken about the shoddy fielding. We've spoken about the batting, showing glimpses of brilliance. Your assessment of Virat Kohli's captaincy, and I would love to ask Mandira the same question as well after.
Well, he's not going to be judged favorably. I mean, if you keep losing and you've lost 2 matches already, the threat is that you might lose the third and then lose the T20 series because the momentum has swung so dramatically and so sharply towards in favor of Australia, and then it kind of impacts even the Test series because you get disheartened. Ultimately, these guys are performing artists, and you get disheartened match after match if you're going to get clobbered. So I think he has a big role even before he comes back to India. He's got a big role to play in lifting the morale of the team, irrespective of his own form. I don't think his own form is a worry. Even in the first match, he had an early life. Then he started playing, many strokes, got out. In fact, in both innings, he got out. Both matches, he got out in a similar fashion. Though in the second match, it took one of the finest catches I've seen by Moses and Hendricks to get rid of him. That was a great catch. These are the kind of catches which win you matches. So his batting, Kohli's batting is not an issue as far as I see it, or even his switch from format to format. But he obviously has to boost the confidence and the morale of his players, and that's part of the captaincy. It's not just about tactics, what bowling changes you bring, this, that, and the other. Now that they are, I'm assuming, talking amongst themselves and saying, अब क्या करना है? 2 मैच तो हार गए. This series is gone. When things start going badly, they can go so badly that recovery becomes almost impossible. And let me give you an example of 2011. India went to England after winning the World Cup. Dhoni's team. They lost 4-0. All test matches. They struggled in the ODIs. They struggled in the T20s. From there, we went to Australia. We lost 4-0.
Yeah, I remember
the
that.
Test series. And then we again struggled in the ODIs and so on. So, if you keep losing like this, it can just take such a heavy toll of your mind space and your mindset that you give up even before entering the field. And that is something that Kohli needs to prevent.
Absolutely. He needs to steady the ship way before he leaves. And there are
Correct.
many ways of doing it. The way we've seen him in the second match, for example, like you yourself mentioned, this staggered bowling approach, getting Pandya into bowl, almost smacks of a certain element of desperation. You've got options like Natarajan who performed so well. Why are you not playing them? Why is there so much fuzz in the mind? Also, the other thing is, the mentoring part of it. Like, for example, you've got Shreyas Iyer. Now, he's not being able to play the short ball very well. But Virat Kohli can play it very, very well. So he needs to spend some more time with the youngsters, mentoring, making sure that you keep playing, making sure that the youngsters get the matches to play. You don't keep taking them out after two matches. Also, so they get used to that kind of a delivery or that kind their shortcomings. They can confront them, they can overcome them. So I think he needs to mentor the youngsters to be able to make sure they reach their maximum potential. He needs to give the deserving bowlers a chance. He needs to play them more cleverly and hold it all together. Steady it, keep it like, on this momentum. So when he does leave after the first test, the team doesn't just flounder and fall apart.
But a lot of what you said also Ravi Shastri has to do,
Yes,
mentoring of the batsmen and the
Of
support
course,
staff, the bowlers, the fielding coach, the bowling coach.
They all work in tandem. And, like
Yeah, they
Virat
have to.
Kohli and Ravi are such a tight unit. With one
Yeah.
part of this marriage going away for a bit, Ravi also will, I'm sure, be, a little stressed.
Mandira, Ayaz mentioned when we were speaking during the last discussion that these might be ominous signs for India. I was watching an interview of KL Rahul, India's vice captain, and he mentioned that the mood in the camp is still positive, despite the fact that India's lost 2 matches on the trot. Do you think the first 2 defeats here might set the tone for the rest of the tour?
I certainly hope not, and I don't think so. I'm genuinely not very okay. I was not surprised that we lost the first match. The second match to be such a duplicate performance of the first match was quite a bit of a shock. I hope we can turn things around because there's still time. Like I said before, the despondency sets in and that giving up attitude, which I don't think the Indian team will give up. So I think there's a long way to go. And let's not forget the next lot of matches is the T20 format. Now, 2020 right now is what we're very comfortable with. At the back of the IPL, everybody's in that zone, everybody's in that mindset. So I think that could be, a turnaround. But let's just focus on tomorrow's match to start with. I think that's a good place to start. And that is where we need to like Ayaz said, it may be a dead rubber for the series, but it's not for the ODI championship. So, but there's still a time to turn around, and I'm sure we can. I don't think this sets the tone for the rest of the series at all.
And India, of course, making no changes for the second ODI, but we perhaps expect them to make a few changes for the third one. Who would you play in this one, Ayaz? Amongst the bowlers, we have T. Natarajan, we have Shardul Thakur, Kuldeep Yadav yet to feature. Amongst the batsmen, we have Sanju Samson, Manish Pandey, Shubman Gill. Replacements that you would make?
Well, I think maybe Manish Pandey or Shubman Gill could come in place of Mayank Agarwal, who's he's got starts, but he's not been able to cash in.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Mayank is one of the few players who's actually in all three formats. So he's had he's got a boost in his career, but he couldn't make the most of it in two chances. So maybe they might try out Shubman or Manish and then put Rahul up to open, have Manish as the finisher. In the bowling, I would think that to drop Jadeja is very difficult because he's the only all-rounder right now. Unless you play a Washington Sundar. So then you have an off spinner and then and somebody who can bat, but he doesn't have the rich experience of a Jadeja. So it's a tough call.
Do you think someone like a Shardul Thakur might be able to come in because he bowls but does bat a little bit as well?
So I think the obvious person to leave out at this stage would be, say, a Saini. You can't leave out Bumrah and Shami. You can't go for wholesale changes and leave out your best performing players over the last 2 years and say, "Abhi sabko overhaul kar lo." It's not going to be like that. So Navdeep Saini possibly could be left out. Shardul Thakur or Natarajan is the choice. And Shardul Thakur can bat a bit. He's also a decent. He's actually a very good fielder, also very hardworking in the field. But the interesting choice for me to see would be Yuzvendra Chahal. Is he going to be, because for many matches one has seen, and maybe because they play for the same team, Virat has implicit trust in Yuzvendra Chahal. They play for RCB together in the IPL. So to leave him out because then you have to start orienting the new bowler, into the way you want to think. And he must have thought when the series started that this guy, there are 4-5 guys who will play all 3 matches: Bumrah, Shami, and Yuzvendra. Maybe a Jadeja. Now there's a problem with all of them. So I think Natarajan or Shardul is going to be a tough choice also to make. But I would think a left-arm fast bowler would just give that little variety which the bowling is lacking.
What about Canberra? Ayaz is sorry, Anubhav, just building on the conversation. How what kind of what can we expect to see in Canberra in terms of the pitch, in terms of change of scene?
Yeah, so what the facts and figures suggest is that the teams batting first have won overwhelmingly. I think it's 9 matches have been played there, 7 for teams batting first, 2 for teams batting second. So that's and the margin of what teams post batting first is what I think 300 or something like that, and teams batting second is 234, 235. So clearly it looks like a good place to bat on first. But then you have to win the toss.
Finally. Third time lucky, perhaps.
Yeah.
Mandira, what do you make of someone like
take an Indian coin and go there, not an Aussie coin.
Yes, we should have stayed one with them.
For the toss.
I think we've used all types of coins, but in the recent past, the past couple of years or so, Kohli isn't enjoying the rub of the green when it comes to the tosses, has he?
Yeah.
Mandira, what do you think of someone like a Kuldeep Yadav? Because at the start of the series, there were talks that he may not have featured extensively in the IPL, but Australia's bouncy wickets plus the long boundaries might actually favor Kuldeep's bowling style. Your take on that?
Absolutely. I said at the start of this our conversation today also, it may not be a bad idea to bring him in for this match.
Yeah.
He's, so I think that he definitely should get a look in for tomorrow's game.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So big thank you to Mandira, big thank you to Ayaz, a big thank you to all of viewers who sent in questions. Let's see if India can actually pull one back and end the series on a respectable note. Who knows, a consolation win out in the third ODI might just act as a shot in the arm before going into the T20I series. And of course, the build up to the T20I series will continue on our One Play Sports pages unhindered. Until next time, enjoy the cricket and we look forward to your company very soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.